Hello and welcome to Gardening with Ben, your go-to podcast for all things green and growing. I'm Ben, your allotment guide, and here to help you cultivate your garden and your passion for plants. Whether you're a seasoned gardener or just starting out, this podcast is for you. Each episode will dig into tips, tricks and techniques to make your garden and allotment thrive. From planting, sowing and growing, we will share all the tips and advice. We will also have regular episodes talking about what we have been up to on the allotment. So sit back, grab a brew and enjoy today's episode. Hey everyone and welcome back to Gardening with Ben for another brand new episode of the week. I hope you're all enjoying these episodes as we're talking about quite a few different topics and subjects this week, where I'm not talking about my allotment for once. Well, I do talk about my allotment as I'm talking about things that are happening, but it's not telling you what I've been getting up to at the allotment because obviously I'm working this week. So I've been talking about different topics of what I've been getting up to and different questions that people like to ask and stuff. I've been trying it out on my Instagram and on my Facebook, and everybody's getting involved, and I'm loving all the replies that I've been getting. And the one that I posted last night is, what's the best gardening tip that you have ever been told? Now, a lot of people do love to share the tips with one another. Just like me, I like to share my tips on what I learn from other people or what I've learned from myself. So I hope that you get some good tips from my podcast myself. And I hope that it encourages you to try little bits as well, as gardening is always a learning curve. It might work for one person and it might not work for you. That's the way that gardening goes. Not everybody can do things perfectly. I wish we could, and then we'd have no trouble and bountiful harvests all the time, and it'd be perfect and easy. We wouldn't need these podcasts or these gardening channels if we grew things nice and easy. But we do have as issues. Now, the best gardening tip that I have ever been told was actually from my dad. And we have a lot of trouble with squirrels on our allotment and mice and rats and things like that, as you do on anywhere. And one time I'd planted all my sweet corn, all looked absolutely delicious. It were growing well, it were ready to pick, and I thought, I'm going to pick that tomorrow. I'm going to come down, pick it all tomorrow and take it all home with me. Well, I came down and every sweet corn had been attacked, eaten, it had all been decimated, and I lost a lot. I felt like crying because sweet corn is one of my favourite things to grow on my allotment, which I've talked about before. And it were all gone. And one year when I came down to the allotment, I saw a squirrel running around with a corn in its mouth. It was carrying it, a full-size corn. I thought, what? It's a squirrel that's pinching them. And my dad came up with an ingenious idea of using his plastic bottles, what he saves, and cutting the bottom off and shoving it on top of the corn. Obviously, once it's pollinated, once it's growing, and it's getting towards the ripening stage, because they won't eat them until they start ripening. They like them when they're nice and ripe. So I put one of those bottles on top of every sweet corn last year, and not one of them got touched because they couldn't get to them. They couldn't get inside of the bottles. Now the bottles just fit on nicely on top, and yeah, all my sweet corn were protected, and I had a fantastic crop last year. Other people's got decimated, got eaten. I did tell them about the tip, but whether they chose to try it or not, that was the question. But yeah, all my sweet corn survived, and so did my dad's. And we had some fantastic sweet corn. So if you have issues with squirrels, rats and mice down at your allotment, I give you that tip to use from my dad to you all to have a nice growing sweet corn this year on the allotment. And he's been saving all the bottles for me for this year. Obviously, I've saved all the ones from last year, but I am growing a lot more sweet corn this year, so I do need a lot more bottles, as I do want to protect them all and hopefully have some decent sweet corn. So yeah, there's loads of little tips out there for you to try. And if you don't try all these tips, you will never know if they actually work or not. But I'm hoping that I do get some decent sweet corn down at the allotment this year. And hopefully all this rain will help it grow, as it was boiling hot on Monday, absolutely gorgeous. I was sunbathing down at the allotment. I couldn't believe how hot it was. And then yesterday, it absolutely chucked it down. I was watching the weather report today, and it said that we've had 110% of our July rain this year. So we've had double the amount of what we should have had already. And wow, we certainly got it yesterday. But I don't mind. I was working yesterday, so it can rain all the time when I'm working. I don't care. Then I don't have to go down and water. I just have to worry about all them slugs going around eating everything, though. That's the only issue when it starts raining. So hopefully, when I go back to the allotment on Saturday, it will have shot up again, and more than likely, all the weeds will have grown back as well. If anybody's got any good tips for getting rid of weeds, let me know. And I think only the best thing is getting down there and getting them out yourself. I don't think anyone's come up with an ingenious idea for weeds yet, unfortunately. But yeah, we've got stuff like that. Another thing what I'm starting to do is I'm starting to share daily tips on my podcast and on my Instagram and Facebook. And I hope that you're all enjoying these little tips and advice. And one of the tips that I shared this morning on my Instagram was to save your flower heads from your flowers. I know I don't tend to do this, and I need to really start doing it, as obviously it'll save money, it'll save time, and save going out and buying the seeds. And this year I grew some poppies from seed. Now, these are ornamental poppies. They're not the red ones that you see like in the street growing out in the curbside, or the California and Icelandic ones that are yellow and orange and things like that. These are actual ornamental ones where they look really nice, like purples and stuff like that. So we've got them growing on the allotment. Now, one of them's just lost all its petals. I've still got quite a few to come out, but one of them's just lost its petals. And I can see the seed head there ready. So once it's died off and it's ready for drying out, then I'll chop it off and take all the seeds and save them all for next year. I could obviously scatter them this year in the ground and let them grow ready for next year, but I think I'm going to save all the seeds and grow them in my shed again like I did this year, and do it that way, as I want to grow them and put them where I want them rather than just sprinkle them everywhere, if you get me. And between now and next year, I'll probably dig them over and pull them out thinking that the weeds growing. So I want to grow them in my greenhouse and hopefully get them started. But the same goes for like sweet peas. If you're growing sweet peas, obviously the more you pick the sweet peas, the more they'll continue growing and getting more flowers on. Whereas if you don't pick them, they go to seed. So it's worth off just letting a few plants go to seed and getting the sweet peas seeds off it, because it's a lot cheaper than buying the seeds from the shop. Sweet pea seeds cost a fortune, and you hardly get any seeds in a packet as well, for some bizarre reason. You'd think it'd be quite cheap for sweet pea seeds with how easy the seed pods form on the sweet peas, but no, they're quite expensive. So if you're wanting to grow sweet peas next year, save some seeds for next year. Same goes for like runner beans, for your peas. If you're wanting to save money, use the seeds that you've grown this year. And I need to start doing that more. And obviously, like I mentioned the other day about taking cuttings off plants as well. Like, even if you go to visit a friend's house or something and you think, oh, that's a nice plant, just ask them, say, can I take a few cuttings off it? They'll probably not mind, and then start them off, and then you can plant them in your garden and you've got a plant for free. And that's the best way to do it. And obviously you can't do it in certain places. You can't go around your local botanical gardens and take cuttings off some of the nice roses and stuff like that. You can't do that. But if you're at a friend's house or visiting someone, just ask them if you can take a little cutting off and get some plants growing. And that's certainly what I'm doing, obviously, with my fuchsias, with my roses. I've done my roses as well, and I've also done some lavender. I said I'd keep you up to date with how well they're getting on. Well, the plants, the cuttings haven't died yet, so that's a good sign. They're all still alive here in my flat. That's why I wanted to bring them all home to my flat and start them all off in like pots of water, so that I can actually keep an eye on them rather than leave them all at the allotment in actual soil compost. And keeping them watered down there. That's the issue, obviously, when I'm working for 4 days. I don't go down to the allotment. So hopefully, fingers crossed, we are going to get absolutely loads of lavender plants and fuchsia plants for next year. So I will keep you updated on the progress of that. And fingers crossed, in a couple of weeks, I might be planting them all up into plant pots if they've all got roots on them. So we'll have to wait and see about that. It's the first time that I've done like all the cuttings myself and got them all growing, so hopefully we can actually succeed and do this, because I will be happy with myself. I still need to look about how to take cuttings for hydrangeas. That's one of the jobs that I do need to do, so hopefully we'll have some hydrangea plants growing as well, as they're gorgeous as well. All mine that are growing on the allotment have come out pink, which means that it's an acid soil rather than an alkali, because if they're blue, that means it's alkali soil. So the hydrangeas tend to change colour to what the soil actually is. So you could go to a garden centre and buy a blue hydrangea thinking, oh, I've got a nice blue hydrangea, but then it might turn pink because the soil is acidic rather than alkali. So yeah, that has been our little podcast for tonight. So please do go over to my Instagram post or my Facebook post, comment what the best tips are that you have learned in your gardening time, and I'll hopefully talk about some of them on my podcast tomorrow, as I'm wanting to get more interactive with my podcast. I'm wanting to hear what people are saying and get back to you on the podcast and talk about it yourself as well. So I hope you've enjoyed this podcast. I've recorded this on Wednesday evening, so I don't know if England have won yet or not, or if they're through to the finals, but we'll see. So by the time you listen to this, we'll know the fate of England tomorrow. So yeah, I hope you're enjoying the podcast. Remember to do give it a like. Please give me a follow if you're not following me. And remember to share it out as well on your Instagram story as well. That would really help. All you have to do is click the share and click on stories, and it'll post it to your Instagram stories. The more people get listening to this podcast, the better. So thanks for listening. Until next time, remember, keep smiling, keep shining, and keep gardening with Ben, everyone. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Gardening with Ben. I hope you have found some useful tips and inspiration for your own gardening and allotment journey. If you have enjoyed today's episode, please make sure to follow and subscribe to the podcast so you never miss a new episode. And if you have a moment, I'd love for you to leave a review and share the podcast with fellow gardening enthusiasts. Your support helps us grow this community and continue bringing you great content. You can also follow us on social media on every platform called Gardening with Ben for daily gardening tips and updates. Happy gardening, and until next time, remember, keep smiling, keep shining, and keep gardening with Ben.